Today we're going to be talking about B2B orders from Shopify Plus, specifically Shopify Plus, and how Webgility Desktop works with Shopify Plus, and just B2B orders in general. I think there's a larger conversation to be had about when it's right for your business to upgrade to Shopify Plus, or if it's right to upgrade, and what you can do in lieu of having that connection to Shopify Plus to sort of manage your B2B orders. So to just introduce ourselves, I am John May. I'm the engagement manager for Webgility, the voice and face for Webgility. And I'm joined by David Pond. Say hi, David.
Hi, David.
Perfect. David is our senior implementation specialist. He does a lot of obviously implementations and knows a lot about the product both on the desktop and online side. And he'll give us some more insight, do a little demo, kind of explaining where the features are at inside of WebGility that help with B2B. So, quick agenda for today's call. It's going to be a little bit shorter probably, unless you guys have a wealth of questions, which is always welcome. But first, we'll just cover just the ground floor, just the basics of B2B orders and how Webgility looks at B2B orders, and then what Shopify Plus brings to that conversation and kind of how it enhances the B2B order flow. From there, David will again kind of showcase how Webgility Desktop works with B2B orders and some of the new features that we built for Shopify Plus specifically. And then we'll end it with a Q&A. Again, if you guys have any questions throughout the demo or whenever we're talking, feel free to pop them in the chat or in the question and answer box. Both of them are perfectly fine. If it doesn't pertain to what we're talking about in that moment, we'll likely get to it at the end during the Q&A session. If it's something that's account focused, like billing or technical related, we'll likely follow up with you after the webinar, but feel free to ask it either way. We're more than happy to dive in. So just to get started, I wanted to talk a little bit about Webgility and sort of our focus as a company lately, some of the features that we've built out. Um, as I've sort of talked about in the past, Webgility has a development team that's focused on building features out for customers that is going to make their accounting flow a little better, work with their stores or sales channels that they use a little better, and save you time and money. Ultimately, that's the whole reason that Webgility is here. And recently, we've kind of taken the leap into building out more functionality for B2B businesses. And that doesn't mean that we haven't had the ability to, process B2B orders or sync B2B orders in the past. We absolutely have. But we have connected directly with Shopify and looked at their Shopify Plus offering and have some ways to, make that a little smoother. So, all this to say, Webgility is investing a lot more in B2B going forward. We think that there's a large B2B market that is sort of untapped in this space specifically. If you look at the trends, B2B has grown exponentially over the last 5 to 10 years, and it doesn't look like it's going to stop. It looks like it's going to get a lot larger. So yeah, if you're looking to sort of, I guess, breach a new market or branch out, B2B seems to be the go-to. So yeah, another thing about Shopify that before we get into the demo and talk a little bit more about how Webgility enables things, Shopify Plus, as we've been told and sort of as we've discussed in the past, Shopify Plus can be a little bit on the pricier end if you don't have it already. It's definitely it's an add-on. It's one that some smaller businesses or people without a ton of B2B orders, it could be hard to stomach. So one thing I wanted to talk about specifically was that Shopify, at its core, if you want to work with B2B orders and you don't have Shopify Plus, Webgility can accommodate that to a degree. There's going to be some level of manual segmentation, but you are able to, you know, have a B2B business and B2B orders alongside your D2C orders as well. So David's going to show a little bit about that and how to kind of work around that if again you're not necessarily at scale, or you're not taking in enough B2B orders to really justify that high price tag for Shopify Plus. If you can justify it, and there is that threshold that you'll hit eventually when you have enough orders and you're, spending enough time on segmenting your B2B orders, there will become a time that it's probably a good idea to get Shopify Plus. But if you're not there yet, it doesn't mean that you can't, use Webgility to make things a little easier for you. So my spiel is over. Sorry for the long-windedness, but I think now is a good time to kick it over to David so he can do a little bit of a demo. He'll show again just the new features that we built out for Shopify Plus, and then sort of tandem with that, some of the ways that you can essentially get around having to have that Shopify Plus connection.
All right. All right. Yeah. And we're throwing around some acronyms here. Obviously, B2B, D2C. So D2C is basically your business to consumer. So it's direct to consumer. It's kind of a newer buzzword for the old term of business to consumer, and B2B, of course, is business to business. So there's different needs between regular e-commerce that you're just doing direct to consumer. Then when you have B2B, there's different differences in the workflows and how you manage those orders. So like a direct to consumer is going to be like a paid order most of the time, is paid up front, online, and that's pretty much, the end of the payment cycle there. Business to business, you're going to go in and have maybe terms or no payment at all to start with. Maybe they pay a partial, and they make another payment to complete it later. So those are kind of some of the features. The other differences are in business to business is in what we're talking about Shopify Plus, is that it allows you to have company information. So here we have a Shopify Plus B2B setup, and you can see we not only have customer information, but we have company information. So that's important. We still, like John said, we can still go in and configure kind of a pseudo B2B workflow without Shopify Plus, but we won't have the features we're going to show today. So yeah, let's get into that. So everyone can see my screen, right, John?
Yep, you're good.
Okay. So there's just a few different settings on the B2B side of our configuration. Typically, once it's connected, like you can see up here, I have a bunch of stores in Webgility. If there's people new to Webgility watching this, I have a bunch of stores connected here. We're going over the B2B Shopify Plus store right now. We do have automation that we can turn on and off, called the scheduler. Um, I'm just going to go through some of the configurations. So let's see here. This is like the first configuration part that we would be working with for the B2B. So we have a way to separate out by order type. So if you're doing direct to consumer and B2B mix, then you can actually separate those two workflows out. You could do an invoice with terms and everything for B2B. You can do a sales receipt for the direct to consumer. We would go into these and we would set these up. So one of the items, like if you do have Webgility, that you'll see that is different with the Shopify B2B settings, is down here at the bottom of record payments. Of course, we're big fans of using clearing or holding accounts in QuickBooks for transactions. But here's some of the new settings. So typically, the workflow without B2B is just, if there's a payment, that's the payment. On a B2B, it could be a partial payment or a pay later. So we kind of describe that here. We have little pop-up contextual, messages here to help make it easier to understand if you're like going in and looking at the settings or want to change a setting. But what we're doing on this today is just going over that each payment as received from the sales channel. So like if a customer makes a payment and then comes back later and makes the final, second payment or final payment on that, we will be receiving each of those payments instead of a single payment equal to the invoice or equal to the order total. What that allows us to do is um, post this into QuickBooks as, say, an open invoice or a partially paid invoice. There's other settings that we're going to have with the B2B. One of them is record PO numbers in QuickBooks. So in Shopify, you'll be able to have PO numbers associated with the businesses and companies. So you see up here at the top, you have a PO number. On the Shopify Plus, we can then associate that PO number on the order in QuickBooks. So we have down here a setting for adding the PO number to QuickBooks on the transaction. Makes it easier to manage that order business to business. There, a lot of PO information that you're working with.
Yeah, and that's a pretty common theme for all the new features specifically with B2B is that all of these things generally are just pulling more information in for you to be able to segment things a lot easier in your QuickBooks. So you might notice that none of these are like crazy workflow changes. It's just being able to pull in additional information directly from the orders from Shopify Plus, since it adds a little bit more complexity using Shopify Plus, those additional fields. We've sort of translated that into, pulling that into existing fields inside of QuickBooks.
Yep. And we still have like credit memo, automated refund posting. So we still have all of our normal settings for orders. Um, Products are still the same for B2B. Typically, you might have a different warehouse for B2B. It's possible that you're using a different location for that. Here's another setting that is going to help separate out B2B orders. So this is the customer information. So with the B2B, there's a whole section down here at the bottom. I'm going to turn it off so you see what the normal section is up here. And you're matching first name, last name, customer name, possibly email, or using a default customer from like a Shopify customer. But when we go into the B2B settings, now we have settings where you can go in and set up company ID, company locations that go along with the company ID. So we have name and location ID, we have company ID. So we have different ways to separate out that company information from the direct consumer customer information. So now we're separating it out in the transactions when they come in, and we're also separating them out, by customer and company when they come in. All the other settings are pretty much the same for the fees and expenses and stuff like that in our posting. One of the settings is to see order updates, because there's two places that you can have a direct to consumer or a business to business order. And you can see we show order type here on the right hand side column. Is on a business to business order, like if you have an order come in and post to QuickBooks, traditionally, like a direct to consumer, that's a completed transaction. It goes into QuickBooks, and that it doesn't change and update between the website and QuickBooks automatically. There isn't like an open channel in QuickBooks. It's a posted transaction, and that's it. So in the workflows that we would do without B2B and Shopify Plus, we would post a open invoice into QuickBooks. You would finish up that invoice in QuickBooks. You would have to manually go up to the store and mark that order as paid or completed. So what we've done is we've added settings to go in and make that easier to manage the different payments and stuff on an open B2B order. So what we're doing here is we're turning on check the channel for order updates. So we turn that on. So now we can see order updates on these B2B orders. When you look at my orders here, say an order came in and posted to QuickBooks, and then that order has now an update. You see this order here is a B2B order, and it has an update in Shopify. That update in Shopify now shows in the update folder. And here's that update in the folder. So this could be a second payment or the first payment, depending on the terms that were set up in the transaction settings. And here we can see there's a new payment on that order in Shopify. So now the order is already in QuickBooks. So it's not an open channel like I was saying. So now we have to say, do we accept this payment now and want to update QuickBooks? Down in the bottom here on the left, we can select the order and we can come down here and we can accept that payment. So once we come in here and accept that payment's going to get posted to QuickBooks. When we go into QuickBooks now and look at that order and the payment, so we'll go back to the 1059 and we go into view in QuickBooks. And I know I'm going through some of these menus without a lot of description, but this is this order details that I opened up here. And we're going to look at that in QuickBooks. Let's see, is that open in my QuickBooks in the background? Yeah. So here's that order in QuickBooks. Let me see if I can make this a little bigger. So this order is now marked as paid. Previous to that payment, it wouldn't have been marked as paid. If there were any payments on the order, it would have shown that in QuickBooks, but then it wouldn't be marked as completed or paid. So now we've synced that paid information from Shopify that the customer, made another payment, and now here we've posted that to an open invoice in QuickBooks and marked it as paid. So instead of just manually doing it in QuickBooks, you're just funneling that information back and forth for the site, from the site to QuickBooks. There is settings also to do it the opposite direction. So if you do post this order into QuickBooks and it's an open invoice, and you get, a phone call from the customer and they want to pay with a different credit card, or they send you a check, or whatever the process turns out to be, you could go in here and mark this invoice as paid. When that happens, instead of manually going up into Shopify, we can come back here. I think I synced that order, so I might not be able to do this one. Let's see. Yeah, I can. So these orders here, in the posted orders, if we updated these in QuickBooks, then down here in the bottom, you have sync payment status to Shopify. So when I do that, do you want to sync payment status of paid invoices on QuickBooks to the sales channel? So what that basically will do is if you've manually managed this payment in QuickBooks and the order is now marked as paid, you can come in here, you can hit this button, and it will sync that payment information up to the orders in Shopify and mark those as paid and completed in Shopify. So you do have like kind of an easier workflow there with the B2B settings to work on the orders. So now, especially if you have different teams, you have a different person with the website information and a different team with QuickBooks, sometimes you have to then shuffle information. Hey, on order, blah, 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 mark it as paid in Shopify, when you get a chance. And that can be, missed or forgotten or left undone. Here, you've got the same person who's managing the orders into QuickBooks or working in QuickBooks can then, go to Webgility and just kind of update that. So those are the main settings for the B2B in Shopify and Webgility. And I think I kind of went through those pretty quickly. Let's see. Make
Yeah,
sure
I
I'm
mean, I
not.
think they're it's pretty straightforward as far as which features they are, and I think the good thing is that this meeting's recorded, so we'll send that out if you have any like questions or need a recap or a replay of specifically what menus David was accessing. And I know it looks like Katie put a question in chat. She says, we use Magento as our platform. Would all the features that David's referring to work with Magento as well? I know Shopify has several features that Magento does not, and vice versa. Most of the features that David is talking about are specifically for Shopify Plus B2B. That does not mean, however, that we're not able to pull and sort of work around this information. I know as we talked about at the beginning, there are some sort of workarounds that you can do with Webgility. Still a bit of manual work, but a lot easier than doing everything manually from scratch, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
And I'm gonna say we've got like, 19, 16 or 19 different stores and marketplaces we connect to. So we are now working on B2B settings for a lot of different online stores. We haven't gotten to B2B settings specifically for Magento. These are the first launch of our B2B settings, and it works with Shopify B2B. So in the future, we may have, and we started a new newsletter, so you might be getting updates like that in our newsletter. So you look for our newsletter, and maybe John can find out how I think we obviously will be sending it to you anyways, but I don't know if we're posting that newsletter information other places for you to be checking in on. But we typically blast out a new feature when we get a new feature, and we are currently working on B2B on our online version and our desktop version of Webgility. So we will be adding more stores to B2B functionality with Webgility.
Perfect, perfect. And do you think now is a good time to go over some of those like little workarounds, I guess, specifically for B2B stuff that if you don't have Shopify Plus, things that you could do to accomplish the same.
Yeah, yeah. So what typically you would see is we have different ways to break out information going into QuickBooks. It's pretty much on your workflow that we configure it. The main issues on a B2B is trying to match companies while you're also matching customers. So there's a few different ways to do that, but your IM specialist that helps set up can help you custom, configure that workflow for you. What we would typically be doing is using like an open invoice or an invoice. The B2B orders would come in as paid. Um, let's see, maybe it's a net 30 is a default. So let's put accounts receivable, say we'll use the transaction terms. So there is like accounting customer terms. So if you match the customer name, and we were talking earlier about the customers, and you have customer matching and you have business matching with the B2B setup. So in the direct to consumer, you're only going to have the customer setup. But what you're trying to do is if you have a business and you're using the customer name field for that business name in the website and in QuickBooks, you're trying to match those up. When you match those up, Webgility, you can say use the accounting customer terms to transfer those terms. Um, it doesn't really transfer, but it matches up the customers and then uses the terms that you set in QuickBooks. So if you have a business customer that's 90 days or 30 days or 15 days, then that will show in QuickBooks. You then manage that open invoice in QuickBooks to accept the rest of the payments or on the website, but then you're manually just transferring that information back and forth between if they paid more in Shopify to finish their order, you would have to go into QuickBooks and mark it as paid. So a few different differences there, but it would bring in the paid orders as showing that there's a payment on them and the unpaid orders as unpaid. If you have, like, say, a payment method that is different between your B2B and your B2C. So like if you have a payment method of terms in Shopify, you can map terms to always go to, say, an invoice. And then you could take your, other payments and go to a sales receipt. So you could map by payment method, and then here, you would take and show and use whatever payment method. So I don't have that set up specifically here, but let's just say that caches the B2B orders, how they're showing up when they come in, and maybe it's credit card or Visa as a default for the B2 direct to consumer orders. And then you can separate those out to go invoice or sales receipt if you want to separate them that way. So there are some differences there on, as you can see, if without the B2B settings, is kind of a workaround. We don't have the auto update going back to Shopify. We don't have the auto update going from Shopify to QuickBooks, but you can still manage, have more automation. And what we're trying to do is use as much automation as we can. That's what we're all about. We want to make sure we're making this easier on you, make sure that you can manage it. So once we do have these settings, if you look at the customer settings here, you wouldn't have the B2B settings. So up here, a lot of times email on B2B workflows isn't what you're looking for. So here, maybe it's you're using the first name, last name field, but this first name, last name field is the company name. And then anything that doesn't match the company name would go to a default customer. So maybe you have like a Shopify customer or some sort of default customer built out in QuickBooks that you would put your direct to consumer orders in because you don't need all those customer names in your QuickBooks, and you're just managing the direct connection to your business name to make sure you're picking up terms and know that they're possibly an unpaid invoice with terms. So those are some of the ways that we're kind of have settings that we can work around the B2B, but obviously there's quite a bit more for B2B on the settings when we do, because it not only in here for the settings of splitting them out by, like the order type B2B or direct to consumer, but we have other settings that we're using also that makes that work better. And that's
Yeah.
included in the settings of doing the order updates over here. And that's also being able to update the order in QuickBooks then, if there's an update on Shopify on an open order, and then also in Webgility, if there's updates on an order that need to go from QuickBooks to Shopify, you can update that payment information. So just some differences there, PO
Yeah, and
numbers, that kind of stuff.
I think sort of another I guess idea for people to be able to manage things a little differently if you're not at the point where you can use Shopify Plus. Like I said, it can be a bit expensive, but if you're a person that doesn't even have a Shopify, another sort of way that you could do this or kind of look at it is that you can set up a different storefront for your B2B versus your D2C, and then have both of those go into Webgility. And that way you can customize things a lot more at a granular level. From there, you can just send all orders from that storefront specifically that's set up for B2B to an invoice, or same thing for your D2C. So there's a couple different ways you could cut it. Obviously, neither of those are going to be as ideal as something that's built specifically for B2B information being downloaded directly and pushed into QuickBooks. Like I said, we're continuing to sort of build out our B2B offering. As of right now, the B2B specific features, the stuff that's built specifically for B2B orders, is limited to Shopify Plus. But if we get a lot of interest, if people are, really gung ho about having B2B features from Magento or any of our other connections, just let us know. That gives us an idea of how impactful it's going to be for our customer base. If a couple of people are asking for it versus hundreds of people, and we see that there's a real need for it, we're more than happy to jump on developing that out. And that's not even to say that if it's a couple people, if you're one of the people that needs a connection built out for Magento to be able to download your B2B orders, we do offer customizations. At that point, it's sort of a pay to play. You pay us for the development cost to add that to the product, and it does get sent out to all of our other customers as well as an update. So that's the added benefit there is that you're kind of bringing that feature to everybody else as well. So anything else you wanted to cover on the B2B stuff in Webgility, David?
Well, you did mention, the old way of doing B2B and direct to consumer was to have two different websites.
Hmm.
So you would have one that's specifically set up with pricing and, customer business information, and that would just be all of your B2B stuff would be set up in that website. And you would just that segmented it, away from your direct to consumer. Then you'd have another website that's just your consumer stuff. Um, that is less expensive probably in monetary sense, but in soft costs, it's more management. You're managing two websites now instead of one. There's a little bit more overhead of time in there. Um, but it does cost less to do that. So I do have quite a few customers that I work with that have two separate websites. One's for B2B and one for direct to consumer. The benefit here is, and of course, like we're saying, it's usually a little bit higher volume for B2B to be able to, upgrade to Shopify Plus and do B2B, but then you're managing it all in one place. So
Yeah.
now you're cutting a lot of that overhead, a lot of that extra time. You have less, um, less processes involved. It makes it easier to manage the data. You have less errors and omissions. You're not going to miss orders because somebody forgot to go, check the B2B website. There's just some pluses. Not no, well, I guess there's a pun intended there.
One big
Shopify,
plus, you could say.
Shopify Plus, yeah. So, and of course, our push is to build out more B2B processes in our software to go with more of our online store connections. So, keep an eye out for that. But whether you're doing this in separate stores or whether you're doing this in one store, and whether you have the B2B or not B2B, Webgility is there to get as automated a workflow as you can get. We also have these articles on our B2B, and we can probably get the links put in. John can add those links um, in our videos. Where's that get posted on, like YouTube, and
YouTube.
have
Yeah,
have
YouTube.
have the help doc
And
links there?
in the email that we send out the video as well, it should
Okay,
be included. So
there we go. And Webgility doesn't shy away from customizations, like John said. We also have a chat bubble down here in the bottom right corner of our software that I'm on a test server, so I don't know if, see if this shows up. Yep, there it goes. So we want you to contact us if you have a configuration change, if you don't know how to set something, or you have something that maybe you changed names of accounts in QuickBooks and now it's not linked to Webgility, but you don't know where that setting was. Just always reach out to us. As long as you're a Webgility customer, you're going to have our support. We kind of pride ourselves on that. So we want to make sure we're taking care of you. So if you do have B2B orders, or you've just gone into B2B orders, if you have Shopify Plus, we'd love to jump in there and help you configure it. If you don't have Shopify Plus, we're still going to jump in there and help you kind of get that workflow better for both your consumer and your B2B orders.
yeah, well said, well said. And just to kind of to wrap up the demo segment, the like I said, the recording will be sent out in the email that gets sent tomorrow. Usually it takes me around a day just to make sure everything is decoded and re-uploaded to YouTube. I think now is a good time to get into the Q&A. If anybody has any questions, this is a perfect time to ask them. You can ask it about anything regarding Webgility. If you have a question about your subscription, if you're not a Webgility customer yet and you have questions, we're more than happy to answer those as well. But if nobody has any questions, then I'm happy to give everybody a couple minutes back into their Wednesday. It's never hurts to have a couple minutes free. So we'll give it a minute here just to let people ask any questions they have.
And yes, we're in Arizona and we're talking about the heat, and this will be a recording out on the web, and somebody will be like in some snowborn state, just freezing, and they'll be listening to us talk about 114 and they're going to go, darn you.
Yeah, not looking forward to leaving my house in the next couple weeks, that's for sure.
No, no, but it's for us, it's only, it's like, after 2 summers, you get used to the heat. So do you find
Yeah,
ways to work around?
anything over
Well,
110, and I think it's just there's no getting used to it necessarily. You just
I
avoid it where
think
you
I
can.
think I think I don't notice it nowadays until it's like 114 and above, where the air gets heated, and it just, like, if there's a breeze, it's just this hot blast.
Yeah, the worst
So
for me is that once it's gotten to so many consecutive days over 100, it doesn't drop back down below 100 at night. We're not there quite yet. Usually it's like high 80s, low 90s at night right now, which is still bearable. But yeah, even when it's like 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night, pitch blackout, and it's still 105 degrees, that's when it's brutal.
Yeah, and I want to ask on we had that question on Magento. So
Mhm.
is there any elaboration? I don't know if we still have. It looks like the name is Katie. I don't know if we have Katie still in the session, do we?
It doesn't look like it. Looks like she
Okay.
hopped off.
All right. If anybody has a store connection and wants to ask that we don't, we haven't talked about here, it's not Shopify based, just feel free to jump in there right now and do some, questions on it for your B2B or how you're currently doing it. And we might be able to elaborate on that. But if not, yeah, we'll give you some time back in your day.
Yeah, looks like we're good today. Pretty straightforward session. I mean, when it comes to B2B, it's not super complicated. I mean, it's complicated in that when you have B2B and D2C, you're having to kind of separate them, and that's really the complicated part. But from the standpoint of we're able to pull the information now, or some of the workflows that we have, I think pretty straightforward as far as things in Webgility go. Generally, it doesn't go that simple. So yeah,
I,
perfect.
I
Oh,
kind
go
of
ahead.
think I kind of think there's a lot of people that don't realize a transaction in QuickBooks. It's a one-time, one direction type, you know, system where once you post something in the QuickBooks, there's not an open communication channel to the website that stays open back and forth. And in real time, you make a payment in the website, and in real time, it changes in QuickBooks. QuickBooks doesn't have that kind of a system set up. So we have to kind of work around that. And that's why we have this order update system where we can kind of have our system go in, see that there was a change on that order, and then allow you to post it either up to the store or into QuickBooks to update that order. So it is something that's pretty cool because it's not a normal operation of QuickBooks to be able to have order updates go in there automatically. And we're happy to try and make more of these as the time goes by.
Yeah, perfect. And after we end the session here, you should get a survey that asks for any topics that you'd like to see covered. These sessions are for you, for whether you're a customer or somebody that's looking to, get Webgility for yourself. They're for you and for us to answer the questions that you have about either the software or, general e-commerce related questions. So feel free to give us your ideas, and
Oh,
we're more than happy to dive into
I
those.
I just got a notice that we had a customer that wanted to do the webinar, um, and they didn't get a link to the webinar somehow. So I'll talk to
Interesting.
you, John, and we'll get that sent out to them so that they can watch the webinar
Yeah.
after we get it posted. So sorry about that. We'll get that to them.
Perfect. Yeah. If you did miss the session, if the I know somebody just joined just now too. If you did miss the session, we'll send out the recording as well. If you have questions in between now and our next session, feel free to send them our way. You can email me directly, john.may@webgility.com, and we can always take care of you. But I appreciate you guys joining today. Looking forward to seeing you guys on the next one, and everybody have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday.